say that I'm going to have a conversation about faith, what do you think of? Do you think of something really churchy or something super religious? If so, you're not alone. As I've started to have conversations about faith and fire, I've noticed that people have an almost visceral reaction when I talk about faith. So that's so interesting, right? When you think about faith, it can be any number of faiths or even within a single faith. There's all kinds of varieties of what people may believe or how they may think. So I want to talk about it. What does it mean to be a person of faith? And how do you get past that visceral reaction to have a real conversation and authentically talk about what your faith means to you? So to talk about that conversation today, I have two guests here with me. I have Shari Sims and Dr. Joy. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Dr. Joy is a presiding elder in the AME Church, and Shari is a modern spiritual yogi. So Shari, I have to start with you. What is a modern spiritual yogi?
The way I think of a modern spiritual yogi is someone who is a practicing yogi, but is living in a consumer modern world. It's not someone who is living necessarily at an ashram or disconnected from the modern day society and what it means to be a part of the world today, but is really tied to the teachings of yoga and lives their lives in accordance with those teachings.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I have so many questions about some of the terms you threw out there, like ashram and some of those other things.
Okay.
But before I dig into that a little bit more, I would love to find out. So I think I know what a presiding elder is, but for those who don't, what is a presiding elder? And can you tell us a little bit about what that position is?
Absolutely. A presiding elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Church is one who superintends a certain number of churches in a certain geographic area. And so I'm in the 5th Episcopal District, and my conference is the Desert Mountain Conference, and my district that I preside over is the Rocky Mountain District. So I superintend churches in 3 states, Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming.
Wow. So I was actually really excited to have you both as guests today, because I think initially when people think about having a conversation about faith, they instantly go to what you do, right? They think of somebody in a position of faith. Matter of fact, when people have been recommending guests to me, a lot of guests have been my pastor or this gentleman who is a bishop. So I love that we have a wide range. So the first question I even want to discuss today is, what does it mean to be a person of faith? And I'll start with you.
A person of faith is just someone who believes in something.
Okay.
In something outside of themselves. And you can have faith in yourself, but a person of faith is a person who believes in something, a higher power or a deity or a being, or along those lines.
Okay. I mean, a very literal response. That definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, Shari, is that kind of how you see it too? Or what does it mean to you?
Well, it's funny that you guys say that because I literally have the word faith tattooed on my wrist. And I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I have been looking for my faith my entire life. I was baptized in the Anglican Church in South Africa, but it was not something that my parents really practiced when I was, older than age like 8 or 9. So I lost touch with that. So for me, what a person of faith is I agree with you. It is someone who believes in something that's something bigger, that there's something outside of themselves. But also I think it means that you prescribe to a specific way of thinking, whether that's like scripture that you follow, that there is like a set, basically a set of ideas, and that you follow those ideas.
Agreed. And I think that's where the differences come in, because faith encompasses all of that. But when you break it down to what your particular faith is, then that's where we get the nuances.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that contribution. So it's interesting. I want to kind of narrow in on something that you said is like you prescribe to a specific thing. So I think of faith as almost being a brand. Every faith has a brand, and then there's sub brands, you have the bigger brand, and then you have each of the product lines. And that's kind of how I see faith. So I'm going to ask each of you, what is your brand of faith?
Sure. So I am a yogi. I believe in the sutras as they were laid out by the sage Patanjali. And so there is this concept of Vedanta, and Vedanta is where Hinduism finds its roots. And in the Rig Veda, which is like one of the oldest religious texts on the planet, there are mentions of yoga, but the actual idea and this like the science of yoga wasn't really laid out until centuries and centuries and centuries, actually thousands of years later in the sutras of Patanjali. So in that, there are like these 8 limbs of yoga. And so like, that's my brand. So the 8 limbs are Ashtanga, 8 limbs. And so I practice those 8 limbs. And as a yoga teacher, I teach those 8 limbs as well. So that's my brand. I'm a yogi, but I am an Ashtanga yogi.
Can I ask a stupid question?
No stupid questions. What's up?
Anything to do with yoga pants? Do you wear lots of yoga pants, unrelated?
I can't stand yoga pants.
I love it. Every time you say yogi, I think of the most comfortable yoga pants that I can think of.
So constrictive. Can't handle it. Yeah. And it's so funny too, because in traditional yoga, you typically wear really loose clothes, like really big t-shirts or like really loose pants. So like, that's what I practice in, or like dresses. I do yoga in dresses a lot.
And I appreciate you letting me ask the silly questions, right? I think this is how we have conversations about faith, is you ask that silly question in a safe space and it's okay.
Right. I didn't know what a presiding elder was. I was like, oh, blow me away with all the new information.
So presiding elder, what is your brand of faith?
So I have to start with trees. Trees are my nature being, if I love trees. And so my brand of faith coincides with that as it has evolved over the years. And my brand of faith is that of a bamboo tree.
Okay. Tell me more.
In that a bamboo tree bends but doesn't break.
Okay.
So when life throws and you go walking through life, journeying through life, I'm Dr. Joy, but there are times when I get overwhelmed. I don't understand things and I feel like I'm bending, but my faith doesn't allow me to break because I still believe.
Yes.
Yes, totally.
That's so powerful. And it's really strong. And I love how it's distinct what your brand of faith is, but you both still have a very clear understanding of who you are and how that shows up in faith. And I think as I have these conversations where I'm exploring faith and how it shows up in different places in different ways, it becomes really clear to me, what my brand of faith is, which I was always taught, you love everyone and let God do the sorting. That's how I describe my brand of faith. And it's interesting because none of us really harked really in on a certain principle that we learned or something that we specifically believe. And it just shows the universality. And that to me is really my brand, is just embracing the different ways that people think and relate to each other and then just loving on them.
So you might not be a yogi in name, but you are 100% a yogi in spirit.
Okay.
Yes, because that's what the guiding principle of yoga is, that it's of universal oneness, that we are all the same. So that the Christian adage, like love thy neighbor, like that's really what yoga is all about, is at the end of the day, like Atman or spirit resides in my heart, but my Atman is your Atman and your Atman. We're all the same.
Love thy neighbor.
Exactly.
As thyself.
Because exactly. That's that was written down in the yoga tradition as well by one of the sages. So it's universal in that. And that's why I feel like you said, it's like everybody has their own brand and everyone's got their own flavor. And so like yoga just happened to be a flavor that I found that I'm like made sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. We're talking about how universal faith is and how these things are all connected, right? Have you ever had to defend your faith to others when you're trying to explain who you are, what you're about?
I don't know. Defend is kind of a strong word, but definitely explain. And I think too, people always ask me, well, so you're a yogi, so that means you practice like Hinduism. I do not. And actually, a lot of people who are Hindu don't practice yoga. So they don't go hand in hand at all. I think there's something like 14% of people in India like practice yoga more than like once a month or something like that. So it's like really a very like specific idea or like belief system as well. But yeah, I do feel like I've had to explain myself a lot, which kind of gets like, people get it though. People of faith understand when I tell them like, I just believe in something bigger than myself. I believe that, I do believe in rebirth. I do believe in karma. And that's something that I felt before I had the terminology of yoga to kind of like categorize it. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, no, I've definitely had to explain what it is I believe to a lot of people, including myself.
Do you find that people are fairly receptive as you're explaining what your beliefs are?
Yeah, totally. I've never really like run into like a conflict type conversation. I think because I'm like a really open book when it comes to stuff like that, and knowing that I don't know. Like there is no way to know, but it's just what I believe. And so I'm comfortable admitting that like I could totally be wrong, and what I believe might not be it at the end of the day, but it gives me comfort and it gives me understanding and it gives me a system by which to live. And that I find that very comforting, and it's just like a guidebook. There's no guidebook for life, right? None, no. So I'll take what I can get.
Oh, I love that. So, Dr. Joy, you are in the AME Church, which is a Christian church. Mm-hmm. And I feel like oftentimes people say, okay, Christian, I know what that is. And so I definitely am excited to ask you this question, but I want to point out something that I saw on TikTok the other day, right? So there was this cute little TikTok and it said, I'm a Christian. And, in true TikTok style, there was like an audio track going in the background and it popped up on the screen like, well, do you think everyone's going to hell? Do you think that you're free of sin? And it was so interesting because at the end they were like, no, are you guys okay? And it just brought up a really interesting point is there's different brands of Christian. There's different brands within a single religion or faith. So I bring the question back to you as somebody who is in that Christian faith. Have you ever had to defend or explain what you believe within that faith?
Absolutely. And as Shari said, sometimes it's defending it to yourself. Like you have to know what you believe. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes defending it is you trying to convince yourself that you truly believe what you say you believe. And but I also believe that faith evolves as life experiences come. And so what helps me to be able to accept all other people's faith is that I believe it's a journey and we have differing journeys, and within God, who we see to be God, there's such diversity of experience of all of this. And at the end of the day, I don't think a person's faith is wrong because it was given to them in who they are.
Yes.
So I accept people. I'm eager to learn about it. At the end of the day, what I have discovered is when I am talking to people about faith, there's a tenet under there that says do no harm.
Yeah.
And so if we're practicing loving each other and loving God, love all, we're doing no harm. When we start to interpret it in structural context or in religious context, now we're putting things on it that kind of dilutes the pureness of faith.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Wow. And it's interesting because having gone through formal training on the faith, the religion that you practice in, I'm sure there are exams and things like that. When you think about education, there's a right answer, right? Like there's no right answer. Well, there's a right answer on this test. Have you run into that where within the AME church or within the faith that you practice, sometimes it feels like there is a forced right answer and you have to either defend or maybe even explain why you do or do not agree with that?
There would have been a time that would have been the case for me. That is no longer the case for me. I'm clear about what I believe, who I believe, where I'm going, how I move in this space. I'm real clear about that. Wow. And so I can't be dissuaded at this point in life because at the end of the day, like I said, it's about doing no harm. And until a differing voice comes and resonates with me, I practice this faith.
Okay. So how do we get to that place? How did you get to that place where you have that level of confidence about what you believe?
Meditation. And you would think in the traditional standpoint, there's this whole train of thought that says, well, we don't do meditation. Well, yeah, prayer is meditation. Stopping still long enough to hear hear your voice, hear your God talking to you. And I'm going to put it in my terms, God speaks to me. I hear audibles, I see, and I am given other signs that I'm clear where it's coming from. Wow. Things have worked out in such a way that in meditation, people sometimes call it manifestation, like it happens quickly. Mm-hmm. But the more you practice believing and trusting, the faster the manifestations come.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm this whole time you've been talking, I'm like having to restrain myself from jumping in because it's so similar in the yogic tradition. Do no harm, ahimsa. It's literally the first yama. It is the first thing that you practice. So it's do no harm towards others. It's do no harm towards yourself. It's do no harm towards the environment and the planet. And talking about meditation and manifestation, my church, if you will, one is nature, always first and foremost, but two is on my yoga mat because it's the place that I find stillness. It's the place that I'm able to stop. And that's where I get my downloads, And so yoga is a moving meditation when you bring in the asana, the postures. And the postures are really designed to just help your body get to a place that your mind can be quiet, to help move and process things through the physical body so that the spiritual body, so the physical body is clear and cleansed so that the spiritual body can receive the messages and the blessings. And so it's so interesting to hear that you say that things happen so quickly, because when I'm in a place where I'm practicing yoga regularly, and yoga is all the things, it's the pranayama, the breath work, it's the asana, it's the postures, it's the concentration, it's the meditation, there's positive thinking is part of it. Proper diet is part of it, because you're cleansing the physical container so that the spirit can be clear. And the ultimate goal of yoga ultimately is to release yourself from the cycle of karma and reincarnation so that you reach moksha, liberation, freedom, so that you reach God realization, so that you become one with God, you become one with Brahman, and that you cut through all of the veils of the world. So when I say I'm a modern yogi, I say that because I love the veils. Okay. I'm all about the nice clothes and, let's go on the travels and let's watch the comedy shows. But all those things are distractions. And they get in the way of the ability to be quiet. They create attachments, they create desires. And these are all the things that as a yogi, you're taught are things that you have to overcome. So, I'm okay, I'm probably not going to ascend in this lifetime. And that's okay. Yes. I had to come to a place where I'm and that's okay. So I'm fine. I'm just going to live my life, and I'm going to try my best to be a really good person and really, and be with my spirit as closely as possible. And there have been moments in my life where I've just prayed for things to stop. I just need everything to stop because I'm craving that silence, but I can create that for myself, and like you said, when you're in prayer and you're in meditation, that's the opportunity where you create that stillness, because I feel we're all just craving that connection.
Yes.
To the divine.
To the divine. Absolutely. Yes.
So now earlier you said that I might be an honorary yogi, or that's what I heard.
Both of you, you too. I mean, the ideas that you are sharing, I'm yep, that's pretty much what we believe.
But then I heard good diet and quietness, and I was I may not fit in.
I know. I struggle with that because I am not a vegetarian. And literally that's part of that's part of doing no harm is not eating animals. So yogi 101, number one is vegetarian. I'm oh, crud.
Oh yeah. We might have to visit some other options here.
Yeah. But it's okay. Cause I'm also what's called a householder in yoga. Okay. So there are yogis who are, the ashram is where you basically go and you you work for the ashram. So like you don't have a regular job, like you don't have your kids, like you don't have your family, like you can become like a swami over time. And so like you're putting in your time at the ashram and like, you know, you do your karmic yoga, like you clean the floors and like you cook the food and like you work at the check-in desk. And then people come to the ashram and they like take classes and they learn and then all those things. So like, I don't do that. Like I don't live at the ashram. Like I have a mortgage. So like
Life.
I do life. So that's, you know, it's why I'm like a modern yogi. I'm a householder. Like I have a job and like all that kind of stuff. And like, that's totally okay. Yeah. That's just like one style of yogi, of being a yogi. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm loving this conversation, and I almost wish that as people of faith, we had opportunities to have these conversations more often. And while we're going to have lots of opportunities to have those kind of conversations on Faith and Fire, I guess here's the big question. How do we get past that visceral reaction to that conversation about faith, right? That brings up all of that stuff that we think about faith, that brings up anything you've experienced in the past or what you've seen. How do you get past that to this place where you can just hear and see people and have a conversation about what they believe and how their faith shows up for them without it becoming all about all that other stuff? Dr. Joy, what do you think?
I believe you have to be willing to be open to hearing what other people are saying, because in where you have to get past that, the visceral reaction, a person of faith is just a person who believes. And so if we get past that, and then we can have conversation, well, what do you believe? Without the construct of traditional church, non-traditional church, denomination, blah, blah, blah. Those things, I believe, are outside of one's faith. That is the place where you might practice it, but your faith goes with you wherever you go, right? You're living your faith all the time. So you have to get to the place where you know what you believe and invite others to explore what they believe.
I feel like that's so on the nose in terms of faith is not always religion. Like there's faith in like squares, rectangle, rectangle, square kind of conversation. Right. Like there's faith in religion, but religion does not equal faith.
Absolutely.
You can be a religious person and not have faith.
Absolutely.
You can go to church every Sunday and not really believe what you're doing there.
100%. Yeah. I think we've all seen that.
100%. Yep.
Or religion is a practice in and of itself. So you can have a practice of something and be religious about it.
Ooh.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And not have faith.
Yeah. I religiously binge watch Netflix, but that has nothing to do with my faith.
That's a great analogy. That's a great analogy. I think episodes are of the devil, but that's a different story.
Oh my goodness.
Because I get so sucked into them.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you can. It's the constructs. And that's another whole conversation about the structures that we practice our faith in.
Okay. So sitting at this table, we were to give one piece of advice to someone listening to this podcast to help them have more authentic, more genuine, more open conversations about faith with those around them. What would that piece of advice be? And I'll start with you, Shari.
I mean, I would just say get right with yourself.
Ooh.
You know, like don't be so worried about what everyone else is doing and like really to put in the work to figure out what it is you believe. Because I feel like you just can't, you couldn't possibly have an issue with anybody else and what they believe. I feel like if you truly a person of faith.
Yeah, we call that mind your own faith.
Abso-freaking-lutely.
Oh my goodness. Dr. Joy, what advice would you give?
Oh, I love this. I love this conversation. It would be, so the authentic you did not come here to conform.
Ooh.
Right? So you have to develop a relationship with, and I'm going in my faith, I develop a relationship with God and then I ask for guidance. So my faith has evolved and to where it's bendable but not breakable.
Okay.
Right? As I started off. And so the one piece of advice I would share with someone is don't should on anybody else's faith.
That's my other favorite expression. Don't should on me. I should do whatever I should do, but I don't even should on myself.
Right.
And I like to enunciate. I did say that at work once, and everyone thought I said something completely different.
You
this is
do
a
have to
PG-13. We are saying SHOULD. Thank you for the help with the spelling. You know my struggle. But yes, I love it. Okay, so mind your faith and don't should on others and other people's faith. That's so beautiful. Okay, well, I don't know that there's much else to say than that. Those two things are big. So I guess the takeaway today would be whatever your faith is and whatever you believe in, be open. Be open to having that conversation and exploring what faith means, not just to you, but to everyone else. When you hear somebody talk about their faith, ask some questions with genuine interest and don't make any assumptions, because faith is something to be explored. A faith that can't be questioned isn't worth having. So we had a really good conversation today about faith and what it means to be a person of faith. That leads beautifully into a next conversation, which is about whether you have to go to church to have a healthy spiritual life. So if religion and faith are two different things, do you need to go to church to explore your faith? Join us next time as we explore this topic and we have a great discussion.